Welcome to Chapter 9, The Late Middle Ages, Social and Political Breakdown from 1300 to 1453. In this section, I will be focusing in on the Black Plague. The influence of sanitation and healthcare practices on society, food supply, diet, famine, disease, and their impact. This is a picture of flagellants. These were people that were parading during the plague, trying to ward off the plague by whipping themselves. You can see through these whips that they are carrying that they are whipping themselves to whip out the plague with God's help. Notice the crucifix and Jesus right there and the banners that they're creating. Problem with the flagellants is that instead of getting rid of the disease, they created more disease by making blood airborne wherever they went. The Black Death from 1848 to 1350. Precursor. Precursor means what happened before. There is overpopulation and malnutrition. Those two going together, when you have too many people, there's not going to be enough food. Okay? This was caused by agricultural improvements, which increased the food supply, European population doubling. So when the population doubles, the food supply has to keep up with it. And that outstripped food production. Between 1315 and 1317, crop failures produced the worst famine of all time in the Middle Ages. Here comes the problem. So you have lack of crops being grown versus population continue to grow. You're going to have problems. Along comes the bubonic plague, also known as the Black Death. This is covered in your document-based question. Please pay attention to the close connections that you can use for that. It followed trade routes from Asia into Europe, probably via fleas on rats from the Black Sea area. Okay. What happened is the fleas would get on the rats would get on the boats would then in turn land in the harbors, and then the rats would go into the cities looking for food, and the fleas would jump off, biting people, and they would get the plague. Some of the popular remedies with relevant medical knowledge absent. Key thing there is medical knowledge being absent. Science did not know what to do with this plague. They come out with aromatic amulets. These are amulets which are like necklaces that have a smell to them. You could call it an odor, or you could call it a pleasant smell, depending on what the amulet was. Another one is temperance and moderation, which means that you would conduct your life in a calm type of way, versus this next one, promiscuity, where you are unrestrained in your sexual partners and have just a festival of doing whatever you want to do and totally abandon any morals at all. Some people went into flight and seclusion. These are people that went into hiding in monasteries and lived on their own. And the last one I talked about was self-flagellation, which did not work. This is a map. You can see from my arrow how it's coming from Asia up into this area, and now we have the Black Death continued. The economic consequences were that it was created a dramatic shortage of labor because of the tremendous amount of people that were dying, which caused wages to go up, and laborers and artisans arguing over money. Falling agriculture because there was no one to farm the food or grow things, climbing luxury taxes or prices of things because there was no one to make them anymore, and the noble landowners were the hardest hit because now they had no one to work underneath them. Remember, in the Black Death, it wasn't discriminatory. It went from the lowest to the highest levels of society. Attempts to freeze wages and force peasants to stay on land created revolts. Okay. The cities benefited from demand for luxury goods, and there were political and social consequences. Artisan guilds win some political power. Why? Because they were the only ones that could make things. Kings take advantage of the weakened nobility in the church. This is a sculpture that shows beauty on the outside, but death on the inside. A lot of the stuff that comes from this period shows the idea of death, because in the time during the Black Plague, there was a lot of death surrounding everything. This is a caricature, which is in your book. It shows the physician carrying what's called a uroscope. This is someone you would urinate in, and then he would look at it and see that it's discolored. Well, obviously, if your urine's discolored, you're sick. You don't need a doctor for that. And he's wearing these shoes, and behind him is his assistant, showing it's mocking the medicine as not being helpful at all. And here's what a upper middle class house would look like with doctors tending to people. And that concludes the Black Plague.